Today on Locked On Canadiens, our mailbag episode is full of draft and trade speculation.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1066 of Locked On Canadiens. As you know, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, where you might be watching me right now. It is our Friday mailbag episode, and today's mailbag episode is brought to you by Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build your team. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm not joined. Oh my God, it's such a habit of saying that, but I'm not joined by my wonderful co-host Scott Matla. He is in fact on vacation. I myself am doing this episode solo, and I do want to apologize because we are missing a Wednesday episode this week, and that is because of work issues. But today, we're talking right now with our Friday episode, and Friday, as you know, is our mailbag day. And today is all mailbag. It's literally just mailbag today. And we got so many questions that I might not even get to all of them. I think the first thing that I want to caution everybody is that you might not hear your mailbag question today. And that is because if it is a specific draft prospect question, not just, what should the Habs do or whatever. If it has anything to do with a specific prospect, we are going to bring it up with our prospect guests. This is the time of year where we have lots and lots of public scouting experts on our show. Truly delightful people that we love and that we talk to every time, this time around, every year when this time around rolls around. Oh my God, I have forgotten how to speak. I'm on a podcast and I can't speak. So every year when this time of year rolls around, it is kind of our favorite time because we have so many guests that we love bringing on, and the draft is fun, particularly when you're picking in the top 5. But yes, so if it is about a specific prospect, and if you've asked in the past as well, I am keeping a little folder of these, and we'll ask our prospect guests about every single player you name, just to get an idea. I'm going to start real quick with a general question, and it's from our really good friend Adam, who we haven't heard from in a while, so thank you, Adam, for getting in touch. The question is, if the city of Montreal renovates the Big O, instead of knocking it down, should the Canadiens host a Heritage Classic in there? All right, so here's my hot take. I don't like the Big O. They spent a lot of money on it, and it's falling apart. It's going to cost a lot to do anything, whether it's renovate, tear down, restart everything from scratch, whatever. But I think that a Heritage Classic is an outdoor game. That is not, in its current iteration, an outdoor stadium. As much as I would like to see another special game in Montreal, it was so much fun having them be part of the official Winter Classic. As much as I want to see an outdoor game in Montreal, or, the first Heritage Classic, I want to see an outdoor game. I want it to be freezing cold. I want it to be snow. I don't want it to be in a falling apart stadium. And, obviously Adam's question stipulates that it be renovated. I don't see it. I want to tear it all down, have a beautiful baseball-like stadium. And yes, I would 100% want a Heritage Classic in. Our next question comes from our very good friend and fellow Habs Eyes on the Prize alum, Robert R. Mailback question. Is it just me, or is it nearly impossible for a Habs fan to root for a different Eastern Conference team to win a cup, given the sheer number of grudges we have collected against the rest of the East? So, I don't know if he's talking about teams that are still in the playoffs or just the East in general, but yes and yes. It is impossible to root for an Eastern Conference team because, let's just talk about it, right? Let's go from, two abysmal teams, right? The Ottawa Senators, objectively abysmal. The Buffalo Sabres, we want to like them, but unfortunately, they're less abysmal and like more just disappointments. Whereas like Ottawa has as an identity abysmal. Both of those teams, right? I mean, in itself, like the Habs against Buffalo, it's always something stupid happens. I like Detroit. We wanted Detroit to get into the playoffs. Like that was the team that we were rooting for when we were getting into that home stretch of the season. But I think there's going to be bad blood at some point between those teams. So like it's nearly impossible. Detroit might be an exception temporarily. And then you look at, okay, you're Toronto, you're Boston. This is the thing. So I watched one of those Toronto-Boston games at Real Sports in Toronto. I was like immersed in that Maple Leaf Square kind of atmosphere. And like watching that game felt to me kind of like, okay, I'm finally going to understand which team I hate more out of these two rivals. And I couldn't make that decision. I couldn't, every time one team scored, I was angry. Every time, that was a game that Toronto ended up winning. And I was annoyed. And then Boston won and I was annoyed. The only good thing to come out of that series was the fact that Toronto disappointed again, right? So that's Toronto, Boston, historic rivalry. There's never gonna be love there. We're never gonna root for that, right? The Carolina Hurricanes, thoroughly dislikable. And obviously, as Robert mentioned, grudge, Saku's eye, blah, blah, blah. The whole Kotkaniemi thing is not even a thing. It's Saku's eye more that I care about more, right? The New York Rangers, Chris Kreider. Who else is there? Philadelphia. I don't know. I used to enjoy the Flyers in the days of, Mike Richards, Jeff Carter, those heydays. I thought the Broad Street Bullies were a fun team. They were tough, but they were also good. But in recent years, they've just been really unpleasant. Florida. We wanted to root for Florida. We really did. And then they got good but bratty. Every game against Florida, like it degenerates, right? Tampa. I hate Tampa. Like I think that in itself is also like a rivalry that has been built up. It's not at the Toronto-Boston level yet, but I hate them. Who else is left? Islanders, really annoying to play against. The New Jersey Devils, I don't want to care about them. And like their identity doesn't say anything interesting to me. It truly doesn't, right? Who else is left? I've probably forgotten some teams. Like honestly, I would even hate the Habs if I wasn't a Habs fan. So I don't really think that there are any teams to love. It's not even about grudges, right? And speaking of grudges, I do have another question. It's actually like a two-parter question that I am now looking up because the second part of the question does kind of relate to Eastern Conference teams and grudges, and it comes from Amelia P. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much does Devin Levi look like Carey Price? You know what? I didn't see it, but now I kind of see it. I'm going to give it a solid 3. And then the next question is, what would give you more joy? Kreider or Marchand losing? Or, I guess, Mark Scheifele last round. So, I think the coward Mark Scheifele is not on the same level as Chris Kreider or Brad Marchand just because he's not as important. He's just less significant. He matters less. He has less value. Brad Marchand is a player that I love to hate. He is one of the players in the NHL, like in my entire NHL watching history, he's one of the players that is the most fun to hate. But Chris Kreider, I don't think I can ever forgive him because the Habs were on a roll and Carey Price that year was so good that I feel like he could have done the same thing that he did in 2021, which is single-handedly drag them into the Stanley Cup final. I thought it was a possibility. I thought with Carey Price there, if that injury hadn't happened, he could have done it. He could have done it all by himself. I don't know if he could have won the cup by himself, but we could have had another Stanley Cup final in Montreal. And at that time, we could have had fans there, right? Like fans could have been there. If you remember that 2021 run, it was partially filled. Like the arenas were, there were some nights where only 500 people were allowed, or 10,000 instead of 1,000, or 1,000 instead of 10,000. And so, it would have been fun in that year. So from my perspective, I am never going to forgive Chris Kreider. We've got tons more mailback questions, including a couple of draft and trade related ones. And that is all coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Policygenius. Let's talk about how life insurance is so important. It is a safety net for your family that you can leave behind. But when you're trying to find the right policy on your own, it can get overwhelming. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Life insurance, to me, is something where, that keeps my loved ones covered if anything ever should happen to me, and particularly if you have children. I don't have kids, but if you have children, it would be so crucial if anything were to happen to you. How would they survive without life insurance? Policygenius is the place to go because it is so convenient and time-saving. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. You're not alone. And you know what? You might have work-life insurance policy, but you don't know if that's really going to offer enough protection. So really talk to an award-winning agent to really get what your family truly needs. And sometimes if you leave your job, you lose that life insurance. You start all over again. But Policygenius will give you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the show description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Whenever you have something to be excited about, the NBA playoffs, for example, it would be so cool to attend a game, but it's really hard to find tickets. Enter Game Time. Game Time takes everything, the guesswork, the stress, the anxiety, all of it out of trying to get tickets. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can browse through the app. It's so easy to use. You can find matchups, anything that you want. And honestly, for me, from my perspective, it's not just about an NBA game. It's any high-profile event. It's a concert. It's a comedy show. It's a hockey game. We're in the hockey playoffs as well. It's baseball season. Find a baseball game to go to. And honestly, for me, the biggest thing is that there are last-minute deals, and most important is there are no hidden fees. I hate hidden fees, but on Game Time, you can show the total up front. You'll get no surprise fees at checkout. It's not a matter of buying a ticket and then ending up paying twice what you thought because of the number of hidden fees there. And, you're going to be able to see the view from your seat before you choose. You're truly covered. There's so many deals. There's flash deals, zone deals, everything last minute. Game Time is truly the place to go if you want to take the stress out of buying tickets for any event. So you could take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's get into some more mailbag questions ASAP. So we got through the first couple. We talked about Heritage Classic. We talked about, rooting interests. Our good friend JD from Locked On Anaheim Ducks wants to know, what do you prefer, pancakes or waffles? Honestly, I've answered this question before and I've gotten into so much trouble, but really for me, what it's about is the toppings. It depends on what you want to get. One of my favorite things to do is have the waffle and then have some sort of nut butter on it and then have raspberries or strawberries on it. That combination is amazing. But sometimes you just want pancakes drenched in syrup. So for me, it's really like, it used to be like, which one do I want? Now it's really, what mood am I in? And never, ever, ever discount the importance of a freshly made pancake. I love that so, so much. Our good friend Blaine Potvin asks a question. Oh, it's a food theme, I guess. What is your favorite Korean food? Because he is asking before he gets there. So I don't want to be cliche, but I really love bibimbap. Like, there's something about like getting all those ingredients and then stirring it all together. They also have these like rice cakes. I don't remember what the name is called, but like these like little tiny rice cakes. It's not like in the sense that we know them, like the crispy ones, but like they're kind of like gelatinous. And they have like this really spicy sauce, and then you can have them with beef or chicken or whatever. Like, I love that as well. But bibimbap for me is like, it's filling, it's delicious, it's generally pretty healthy. It's something that's great like for like a work lunch or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that you're not going to go wrong with whatever you try over there. Like, Korean food is so, so, so good. Now back into our hockey questions. Wade M asks, what is more likely come draft day? Either Hughes trades Winnipeg's pick in a familiar move for a player that better fits this team's timeline, or Hughes uses his plethora of assets to move the Winnipeg pick up in the draft, assuming a player they really like would be gone otherwise. So Winnipeg is picking in the late 20s, I believe around spot 27. So there's a possibility that the Habs can find someone at 27 that they might really like. But Hughes likes to do the thing where he trades for a player that needs a change of scenery. He's done this 2 years in a row. I would argue that the Doc move was much more impactful than the Newhook move ever will be. But we'll see, you know, it might be 5 years from now, Newhook is the one scoring that overtime Stanley Cup winning goal. I don't know. But I think it's really interesting. I feel like it's less likely that he would move up. I feel like it's more likely that he would move the pick, and get a player in return. So the question is, what is more likely? And I think that's the more likely scenario, is trading the pick for a player. Zach asks, third jersey. Do you think the Habs will ever introduce an alternate jersey or stick with the classic home and away jerseys? A lot of teams seem to have third jerseys nowadays, bringing in more revenue and giving fans another option. I'd love to see it someday. So whenever the Habs do a fun jersey, they end up losing it. The Expos themed ones were gorgeous, and the Habs couldn't play well in them, and people kept getting injured. The dark blue ones before that were stunning, but it was such a cursed jersey. So, you know, when the Habs do kind of these seasonal, like limited edition type of third jersey, it doesn't work out. Like, if they want to put a third one in the regular rotation, I would be down for that, but I feel like right now maybe we stay away for a little while. And then one of the related questions comes from a really good friend, Kevin S. Hi, Kevin S. Hope you're listening in the car with your daughter. Not that it should ever be done, but if the Habs were rebranding, what would be some options for new names for the team? Montreal Construction Cones, I guess. Montreal Potholes. Montreal Unfinished Construction. Montreal Traffic Jam Due to Construction. Montreal Rue Barré. Montreal Detours. Montreal. Those are all the names that I could come up with. And all of those jerseys would be some combination of gray for concrete or cement or pothole, and orange for construction cones. And to end the segment, we got a question from Chalupa Batman. Will the Habs trade for Marco Rossi? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think there's a possibility that he will be given up for any price. That's where I stand on that one. In just a moment, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Habs future, Habs draft, and all of that. And that's coming up right up next. But first, this episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Need to hire? You need Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed. And that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. The thing that I love about it is that it makes hiring so easy because it just does all of it for you. And if you've ever had to hire, you'll know it is a thankless chore. Nobody likes to do it. And it's so important to get it right. It's so hard. And Indeed does that hard work for you. It shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post so you can hire faster. Indeed's hiring platform matches you with quality candidates instantly. It's so unbelievably powerful, delivering 4 times more hires than all their job sites combined, according to Talent Nest in 2019. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer good for only a limited time. Claim your $75 credit right now at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, we are getting into the wire or down to the wire with our mailback questions. And once again, don't forget, if you ever want to send us a mailback question, you can find us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. That's really the best way to do it. You can tweet them at us at LO_Canadiens. You can also leave them in the mailback comments. Sorry, in the YouTube comments, and just put MBQ or mailback question at the beginning so that we can bring it up during the show. So we've got some more questions. Our good friend Casey Lee. What are the chances that the Habs take a rear guard with the 5th overall pick? So Ken Hughes is not really the kind of guy to say a thing he doesn't mean. Like, that's not our experience of Ken Hughes. He tends to be a lot more transparent. So I don't necessarily think that, him saying a forward, like right now, he says right now the plan is to draft a forward. I think he understands that that's what he needs to do. And it has to be a good enough forward to really increase the Habs' skill, creativity, and just generally threateningness. Is that a word? On offense, right? So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Like, if there's some guy there that like they realize that, oh no, this really is the missing piece. This guy's going to be our number 1D forever and ever. Like, I get it. But if not, and I don't necessarily see anyone in that, like, there's a lot of defensemen, but I don't see someone that high up that they have to take that will be available, right? So the chances are fairly low. Like, I do trust that they say that they're listening, they're considering, but they plan to draft a forward. And then Hockey Ninja asks us, what pieces do you think Habs need to add to complete a core? And which draft picks or trade for players or FAs would you get to fill those holes? So I think it, like, to a certain extent, free agency, like a good player, like the kind of player you want being available in free agency, means something went wrong with his existing team, right? Because usually the players that hit free agency and are listening and are open are either players where it's like, no, this is not happening for me here. Like, there's no chance for me to win in the next 10 years. I need to leave. Or it's a player that already has established themselves, but they're on the downside of their prime, right? So free agents are hard to come by. It's not impossible, but it's hard to come by. And sometimes it simply doesn't work out the way you want to. I mean, look at John Tavares in Toronto, right? He got old pretty fast. But yeah. So what pieces do you think the Habs need to add and complete a core? That's a tough one because I don't know what Kirby Doc is going to look like when he comes back from injury. But I think that rather than focus on changing the centers, you kind of make do with your 1A, 1B there with Kirby Doc and Nick Suzuki. Um, because at this point it's too late, right? Like you're not going to draft like that elusive center, right? But I think Nick Suzuki's pretty elite, and I think Kirby Doc has the potential to do that. In terms of wingers, I would like to see the middle six short up a little bit. Like I feel like the Habs will be good with their, with their fourth line or their options for the fourth line or their options for the bottom six. But like that middle six really, they have no depth after that top line. Or not enough depth after that top line. So I'd say you're missing at least two forwards who haven't yet shown themselves. And then in terms of defensemen, like I feel like the Habs are missing that perennial Norris conversation guy. They really need one of those. Not that I don't love Caden Gooley, Lane Hudson, David Reinbacher. Like, not that I don't love the options they have right now, but they do have solid, like, third pairing defenseman or like second, third pairing defenseman. But I'm not seeing that guy that like everybody's terrified on the ice because they can do it all. And that's someone I'm looking for to complete this core. So that was a long-winded way of saying, which draft picks or trade for players. I think with a defenseman, really, it's not happening. They need something really lucky, or they need some guy to really break out and really surprise people. I have a lot more mailbag questions, but I am running out of time in this episode. So I'm really quickly going to do one last question and then save the others for next week when Scott will be back. Our final question of today comes from our really good friend Andrew G. That's also on Twitter. I have some emails, I have a lot more tweets, I have some DMs to bring up in our mailbag. So I'm going to save them for next week, and some of them might turn into fleshed out topics. But the last question we're going to do today is the Utah hockey team. So Andrew asks us, what is the worst option given? So starting today, you can vote on the Utah NHL team's name. It is a fan vote, and I will read you all the names before I tell you which one I like the least. The options are Utah Mammoth, Utah Blast, Utah Fury, Utah Ice, Utah Squall, Utah HC, Utah Venom, Utah Glaciers, Utah Blizzard, Utah Canyons, Utah Black Diamonds, Utah Hive, Utah Caribou, Utah Frost, Utah Mountaineers, Utah Swarm, Utah Powder, Utah Freeze, Utah Yeti, Utah Outlaws. All right. I got to tell you, the one that's the best is the Utah Black Diamonds, but it would be very unfair of the team to adopt that one just because they would be stealing it from a now defunct women's hockey team that was very near and dear to its fans. I like the one that I think is really funny is the Utah Yeti. Like I think it's just hilarious. It'd be really funny, like to be like, oh, the Habs are playing the Yeti this week, The Utah Powder is by far the worst one because I understand why we're talking about this. Like, so the Hive and the Swarm, real quick, Utah has like a long history of bees, and I believe it's based in the fact that like a Church of Latter-day Saints has like some worker bee kind of theme motif or whatever. I'm not really up on religion, but like it's like bees are like synonymous with Utah apparently, or like they have like a thing. I don't like Utah HC. I think it's a very unimagined choice. I think it's funny that you kind of like want to imitate a lot of like football clubs have that. But I do think Utah Powder is worse than that because why, when you have like you've got so many options that have to do with storms and snow and ice and weather and blizzards, glaciers, squall, ice, blast, all kinds of stuff, frost, freeze, all of that. You've got Black Diamonds, which is by far the coolest name. You've got Yeti, which is the most fun. You've got Utah Outlaws, which isn't bad. Mountaineers, which like it has to do with Utah, but it's like kind of lame. And then you've got Utah Powder, which I know it's for snow, but honestly, why would you name your hockey team another word for drugs? I don't get it. Anyway, so that to me is the worst one. Or it's like Utah baby powder. I don't know. I don't like it. But, you know, the rest are not bad, but Black Diamonds is by far the coolest. I hope they go with Yeti, though, because it'd be hilarious. All right, so that's it for me today. Like, I did miss a lot of mailbag questions. I really so much. We will cover them, I promise. I know sometimes we say we will, and then it takes us weeks to get to it, but eventually we will, I promise. Scott will be back next week, so please make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Don't forget, we've got draft guests coming up. You can always email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, LO_Canadiens. You can find me on Twitter at The Active Stick. You'll find my co-host on Twitter at Scott Matla. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back on Monday.